David was a man who seemed to have everything. At just 40, he was a billionaire, the owner of many companies, and one of the most powerful people in the city. People often said he was cold and distant, a man who didn't trust easily. His life was full of work, meetings, and expensive things, but deep inside, he felt empty and alone. On a warm spring evening, David was invited to a charity event held in a large hall downtown. It was a gathering of the city's rich and famous, all dressed in their best clothes, smiling and talking about their successes. David didn't want to be there. He came because it was expected of him, but he stood at the edge of the room, quiet and watching. The hall was bright with lights hanging from the ceiling, and soft music played in the background. People were laughing and taking pictures, but David stayed silent. He was wearing a black suit, looking sharp but serious. His dark eyes moved slowly across the room, avoiding most of the people. Suddenly, he felt a soft touch on his arm. It was unexpected and made him turn quickly. His face showed surprise and a bit of irritation. "Don't touch me," he said, his voice calm but firm. The woman who touched him smiled kindly. She was not like the other guests. Her dress was simple but elegant, and her eyes were full of warmth and courage. Her name was Anna. Anna was a young woman who worked as a volunteer for the charity. She had heard many stories about David, but she did not see him as a rich and powerful man. To her, he was just a person who might need help or a friend. She did not move away after he said, "Don't touch me." Instead, she took a small step closer, looking directly into his eyes. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "But sometimes, people need to feel that someone cares." David was surprised. No one had ever spoken to him like that. People usually admired him, feared him, or ignored him. But Anna's words made him think. For a moment, he forgot the crowd and the noise around him. He forgot about his business and his responsibilities. Anna gently asked, "Would you like to talk for a moment? Just for a few minutes." David hesitated. He was not used to talking to strangers, especially not women who ignored his rules. But there was something about Anna's voice that felt different. It was honest and patient. Slowly, he nodded. They found a quiet corner of the room, away from the bright lights and loud conversations. Anna sat on a chair, and David stood beside her, still unsure. He was uncomfortable with this feeling, this closeness. But he did not pull away. Anna began to speak about the charity and the people it helped. She told stories about children who needed school supplies, families who had lost their homes, and the hope that the charity tried to bring to their lives. David listened carefully. For the first time in a long time, David's heart felt a small change. He saw the world from a different side, not the world of money and power, but the world of kindness and struggle. Anna looked at David and said, "I believe everyone has a story. Sometimes, the hardest stories are the ones we hide inside." David thought about his own story. He had grown up in a small town, with few people who cared about him. His parents worked hard but never showed much love. When he was young, he promised himself that he would never be weak or dependent on anyone. That promise had made him strong, but it had also made him lonely. Anna's presence was like a light in a dark room. David wanted to reach out but didn't know how. Suddenly, the noise from the party grew louder as more people moved around them. David looked at Anna and said, "I should go." Anna smiled gently. "Maybe you don't have to be alone all the time." David nodded slowly, not ready to say more. But something inside him told him this was not the end. Something about Anna's courage to touch him, to disobey his silent rule, had started a new feeling hope. As he walked away, David realized he wanted to know more about this woman who dared to ignore his "don't touch me." He wanted to see if maybe, just maybe, there was more to life than control and wealth. That night, David couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Anna and her words. He felt a small, warm spark in his heart, a feeling he had forgotten long ago. For the first time, David wondered if life could be different. If he could be different. The next morning, David woke up feeling strange. He had spent years building walls around himself, protecting his heart from pain and disappointment. But the night before, something had changed. Anna's touch, her words, they stayed with him like a gentle breeze on a cold day. David looked out of the large window of his penthouse apartment. The city below was already alive with noise and movement. Cars rushed by, people hurried to work, and the sun shone brightly. Everything seemed the same, but inside David, everything felt different. He thought about Anna, the simple, kind woman who had ignored his warning, who had dared to touch him when no one else had. Why did he feel drawn to her? Why did her courage and warmth make his heart beat faster? He didn't know the answers. But he knew he wanted to see her again. David's assistant, Mark, arrived at the apartment with a pile of papers and a list of meetings. David barely looked at them. Instead, he said, "Mark, I want to visit the charity organization today. I want to meet the people who work there." Mark raised an eyebrow. "The charity? But you have a busy day ahead." David shook his head. "It can wait." Mark didn't argue. He had worked with David long enough to understand that when David made a decision, it was serious. Later that morning, David drove to the charity's small office on the edge of the city. It was a simple building, nothing like the tall glass towers where David usually worked. The air smelled fresh, and the sound of children playing came from nearby. Anna was there, organizing papers and talking softly with other volunteers. When she saw David, her face lit up with surprise. "David." "What a surprise," she said, smiling warmly. David smiled back, feeling more relaxed than he had in a long time. "I wanted to see where you work," he said quietly. "I want to understand." Anna showed him around the office, introducing him to the team. She told stories about the families they helped and the struggles many people faced every day. David listened closely, seeing a world he had never truly noticed before. They walked outside, where a group of children gathered to play. David watched as Anna kneeled down and talked to a little girl with bright eyes. The girl laughed and held Anna's hand. David felt a strange emotion, something like hope mixed with sadness. He thought about his own childhood, how lonely and difficult it had been. For the first time, he wanted to be part of something bigger than himself. Anna looked at David and said, "You don't have to be alone, you know." David looked away, feeling a little embarrassed. "I've spent so long protecting myself. It's hard to change." Anna nodded gently. "Change is never easy. But it's possible." They sat on a bench in the small park nearby. The sun was warm on their faces, and the children's laughter filled the air. David felt something soft inside him, a feeling he had not known for many years: peace. For hours, they talked. Not about business or money, but about life, dreams, and fears. Anna listened without judging. David spoke honestly, sharing pieces of his past he had kept hidden. He told her about his parents, the empty house, the loneliness. Anna shared her own story, how she had grown up in a small town and found purpose in helping others. As the day turned to evening, David realized he didn't want to leave. He wanted to stay close to Anna, to learn from her and to find a new way of living. Before leaving, David surprised Anna by saying, "I want to help. I want to do more than just give money. I want to be involved." Anna smiled, her eyes shining. "That means a lot." David felt a warmth inside, the beginning of something new. That night, David sat alone in his penthouse. But this time, he did not feel lonely. He thought about the day and the people he had met. The world looked different, full of real faces and real stories. He knew his life was about to change. Anna had touched more than his arm, she had touched his heart. As he closed his eyes, David whispered to himself, "Maybe I'm ready to live." Days passed, but David's mind kept returning to the charity and Anna. For years, his world had been a cage of rules, control, and distance. Yet, meeting Anna and hearing her stories had begun to break down those walls. Something inside him was changing, though he did not yet fully understand how. David's usual routine was slowly shifting. Instead of rushing from one meeting to another, he made time to visit the charity again and again. Each visit revealed a new side of life, a life filled with hope, kindness, and sometimes struggle. Anna welcomed him every time with a smile, always ready to show him something new. She introduced him to the families they helped, the volunteers who gave their time, and the children who dreamed of a better future. David was amazed at how much warmth and joy filled the small charity office. It was a world so different from his own, full of simple happiness that he had forgotten could exist. One afternoon, as they worked together preparing care packages for families, Anna noticed David's quiet moments. She saw how he looked at the children playing outside, his eyes softening. "Are you thinking about something?" Anna asked gently. David paused, then said, "I'm thinking about my childhood. How lonely I was." Anna nodded. "Loneliness is hard. But you don't have to be alone now." David smiled, but there was sadness behind it. "I built walls to keep people out. I thought that would keep me safe. But now, I'm not sure." Anna placed a hand on his arm, careful and kind. "Walls protect us, yes. But they can also keep the good things out." David looked at her hand and then into her eyes. He wanted to trust her, but it was difficult. Trust was a word he had almost forgotten. That evening, David found himself walking through the city streets alone. The lights around him blurred as his thoughts swirled. He had spent so long focusing on success, power, and control. Now, he was learning about something more important: connection. He thought about Anna's courage, how she had touched him when he told her not to. That moment had started everything. David reached a small park bench and sat down. The cool air felt good against his skin. He closed his eyes and tried to remember what it felt like to be free from fear, from rules, from loneliness. A voice broke his thoughts. "David." He opened his eyes and saw Anna standing nearby, holding 2 cups of coffee. She smiled and sat next to him without waiting for an invitation. "I thought you might want this," she said, handing him a cup. David accepted it, surprised by the warmth of the gesture. They sat together in silence, watching the stars begin to shine. Anna spoke softly. "You don't have to fix everything at once. Change takes time." David nodded slowly. "It's just hard to let go of control." Anna smiled. "Sometimes, letting go is the first step to finding peace." The two talked long into the night, sharing stories, fears, and hopes. For the first time, David felt comfortable being himself without the mask of the billionaire, without the walls he had built. Over the next weeks, David's visits to the charity became more frequent and longer. He helped organize events, spoke with families, and even joined a small group of volunteers who worked to improve the community. Each day, he learned something new, not just about the world around him, but about himself. Anna noticed the change too. She saw how David's eyes grew softer, how his smile became more genuine, and how he began to open his heart. One afternoon, while walking through the busy market near the charity, Anna suddenly stopped. "David," she said, "there's something I want to show you." Curious, David followed her through the narrow streets until they reached a small, colorful house. It looked worn but full of life. Children ran in and out, laughing and playing. "This is where one of the family's lives," Anna explained. "They are struggling, but full of hope." David watched as Anna spoke kindly with the mother and children. The family welcomed them with warm smiles, offering tea and small gifts. David felt his heart fill with emotion. He saw faces full of courage, despite their difficulties. It reminded him that life was about more than money and power. It was about love, kindness, and connection. That evening, as David walked home, he thought deeply about the walls he had built around himself. He realized that Anna had not only broken those walls but had helped him build something new: trust, hope, and friendship. He smiled to himself, knowing that this was only the beginning. The changes in David's life were clear to everyone around him. The man who once stayed distant and cold was now becoming warmer and more open. But change, no matter how hopeful, is never without challenges. One rainy afternoon, David sat in his office, watching the drops race down the large glass window. The city was gray and wet outside, but inside the tall building, the world felt different. David had made a decision to invest more time and money in the charity. He wanted to make a real difference. His phone rang. It was Mark, his assistant. "Sir, the board is asking about the new charity project. They don't agree with spending so much money outside the company's main goals," Mark said carefully. David sighed. The board had always focused on profits and growth. They didn't understand his new vision. "I know," David replied quietly. "But this is important." Mark hesitated, then added, "They want you to reconsider. They say it's risky." David looked at the rainy city again. The risk felt worth it. He had seen the faces of the families Anna helped. He had heard their stories and felt their hope. This was more than money. It was about changing lives. That evening, David met Anna at the charity office. She was busy organizing supplies for a new program. When David told her about the board's reaction, her smile faded. "It's not easy to change the world," Anna said softly. "People are afraid of what they don't understand." David nodded. "I have to fight for this. But I don't know if I'm ready." Anna looked at him with confidence. "You are stronger than you think." Over the next days, David faced many meetings and arguments with the board. Some were friendly but firm. Others were cold and unkind. They questioned his judgment and told him to focus on what mattered most: business. David felt the pressure but also the determination growing inside him. He realized this was a test not just of his business skills, but of his heart. One evening, tired and frustrated, David went to the charity office. The rain had stopped, and the sky was clear. Inside, Anna and the volunteers were preparing for a special event to raise awareness. Anna greeted David with a warm hug. "You look tired." David smiled weakly. "It's been a long day." Anna handed him a cup of tea. Remember why you started this? David looked around the room at the people working together. Their energy was contagious. He felt his strength returning. Thank you, he said quietly, for reminding me. The charity event was a success. Many people came, donated, and offered help. David gave a speech, not as a businessman, but as a man who believed in change and kindness. After the event, David and Anna walked outside into the cool night air. The city lights sparkled like stars. Do you ever get scared? David asked her. Anna thought for a moment. Yes. But fear doesn't have to stop us. It can be a sign that we are doing something important. David smiled, feeling hopeful. But the challenges were far from over. One morning, as David arrived at the office, he found a letter waiting for him. It was from a powerful competitor, warning him to stop his charity work or face consequences in business. David's heart raced. He had entered a world where kindness was met with threats and danger. He showed the letter to Anna, who frowned but stayed calm. This only means you are making a difference, she said. We must be careful, but we cannot stop. David nodded, feeling both fear and courage. He was no longer alone. With Anna and the charity behind him, he believed he could face whatever came next. That night, David stood by his window, looking out at the city he wanted to change. The rain began again, washing the streets clean. He whispered to himself, "This is just the beginning." David sat at his large desk, the letter from the competitor still in his hands. His mind was full of questions and doubts. For years, he had lived a life controlled by rules and certainty. Now, he was facing a new kind of challenge, one that felt personal and dangerous. Anna sat across from him, calm but serious. She had been by his side through every step of this new journey. Her quiet strength was something David admired deeply. "We can't let this stop us," Anna said firmly. "If we give up now, everything we've worked for will be lost." David looked at her and felt a sudden wave of gratitude. "You're right," he said. "But I don't want to put you or the charity at risk." Anna smiled softly. "We will be careful. But we cannot let fear control us." David nodded. The truth was, he was scared. But he knew he had to be brave, not just for himself, but for the people depending on them. The next day, David called a meeting with his closest team. He explained the situation and asked for their advice. "We need a plan," David said. "We must protect the charity and continue our work." Mark, his assistant, spoke up. "We can increase security and keep a close eye on the competitors' moves. We also need to communicate with our supporters." David agreed. They worked together to create a plan to safeguard the charity's work and keep everyone safe. Meanwhile, David's visits to the charity became more frequent. He wanted to be there in person, to show his support and strength. Anna was always there, organizing and encouraging everyone. One afternoon, as they prepared for a new program to help families affected by the recent economic difficulties, David noticed something different in Anna's eyes. There was worry beneath her usual calm. "Is everything okay?" he asked. Anna hesitated. "I received a call this morning. Someone asked questions about the charity's donors and plans. It made me uneasy." David placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We will handle this together." That evening, David invited Anna to his home. They sat in the quiet living room, away from the noise and stress of the outside world. "Anna, I don't want you to feel scared because of me," David said honestly. You brought change to my life, and I don't want anything to harm you. Anna smiled gently. I'm here because I believe in what we're doing. Fear will not stop us. David looked at her, feeling a connection deeper than before. He realized that Anna was no longer just a friend or a helper, she was becoming the most important person in his life. Days turned into weeks. The pressure from the competitor grew, but David and Anna stood firm. They reached out to the community, sharing stories of hope and kindness. More people joined their cause, offering support and friendship. One afternoon, while visiting a family helped by the charity, David saw the real impact of their work. The mother thanked him with tears in her eyes. Her children smiled brightly, their faces full of hope. David's heart swelled with emotion. He understood now that his wealth was not just about money, it was about the power to change lives. That night, David and Anna walked along the city streets, under the soft glow of streetlights. The air was cool, and the world felt peaceful. Thank you for standing with me, David said quietly. Anna took his hand in hers. We are stronger together. David smiled, feeling a warmth he had never known. The journey was far from over, but he no longer felt alone. Together, they would face whatever challenges came next. The days grew longer and more challenging for David and Anna. The threats from the competitor had not stopped. But something unexpected was happening. The community was beginning to rally behind them. People who had once been silent were now speaking up, sharing stories, and offering support. David felt a new strength growing within him, fueled by the kindness and courage of those around him. One morning, David arrived early at the charity office. Anna was already there, organizing volunteers and supplies. The small space was filled with energy and hope. David smiled as he watched her move gracefully from one task to another, her face calm but determined. Good morning, Anna, David said softly. Anna looked up and returned his smile. Good morning, David. Ready for today? David nodded. I think so. What's the plan? Anna pulled out a list. Today, we visit families who need extra help. We deliver food, clothes, and school supplies. And we listen. David liked that last part. Listening was something he had rarely done in the past. As they prepared to leave, Mark arrived with news. The board has agreed to support the charity project. They want to see the positive impact firsthand. David felt a rush of relief. It was a small victory, but an important one. The team loaded supplies into the van, and soon they were on the road, driving through neighborhoods where people struggled but hoped. David watched as Anna spoke kindly to each family, asking about their needs and dreams. The gratitude in their eyes touched him deeply. At one house, a young boy named Sam greeted them with a shy smile. His mother thanked David and Anna for their help. Sam loves school, she said. But sometimes we don't have enough to buy books or clothes. David knelt down and looked into Sam's eyes. We're here to help you learn and grow. Sam smiled brighter, and David felt a warmth spread in his heart. As the day went on, David and Anna continued visiting families. Each story was different, but all shared a common thread: hope for a better future. On the way back to the office, David turned to Anna. Today was different. I feel connected. Anna nodded. That connection is what makes the work real. It's not just about giving, it's about being part of something bigger. Back at the charity, David received an unexpected visitor. It was Mr. Reynolds, a senior member of the competitor's company. David greeted him cautiously. What brings you here? Mr. Reynolds smiled politely. I've been watching your work. I must admit, I underestimated you. David was surprised. Why the change of heart? Mr. Reynolds sighed. Because I see the good you're doing. Maybe there's room for kindness in business after all. David nodded slowly. It's never too late to change. Mr. Reynolds extended his hand. Perhaps we can find a way to work together. David shook his hand, feeling a new chapter beginning. That evening, David and Anna sat together, reflecting on the day. The challenges were still there, but so was hope. Anna looked at David and said, "You've come a long way." David smiled. "I couldn't have done it without you." She reached out and took his hand. "We're in this together." For the first time, David felt ready to face the future not alone, but with someone who believed in him. As the city lights twinkled outside, David whispered, "Thank you, Anna, for changing my life." The months that followed were full of changes both in David's life and in the lives of those around him. What started as a simple act of kindness from Anna had grown into something much bigger than either of them imagined. David was no longer just a billionaire with wealth, he had become a man with a heart, a man who cared deeply about others. One bright morning, David stood in front of a crowd gathered at a new community center. It was a place built by the charity, funded by David's support, and filled with hope. Families, children, and volunteers filled the room with laughter and excited chatter. Anna stood beside him, her face glowing with pride. She had worked tirelessly to make this day possible, and David knew he owed much of his new life to her courage and kindness. David stepped up to the microphone, feeling a mixture of nerves and excitement. He looked out at the faces before him, people whose lives had been touched by the charity. He saw hope in their eyes, and it made his own heart full. "Thank you all for being here," David began, his voice steady. "This center is more than just a building. It is a symbol of what we can achieve when we come together. It shows that kindness and care can change lives." The crowd applauded warmly. David's words felt real to him because they came from a place of truth. After the speech, David and Anna walked through the center, watching children play and families sharing meals. It was a beautiful sight, a reminder that life was about connection and love, not just success or money. Later that day, as the event wound down, David found a quiet moment with Anna. "Do you remember the day you touched my arm?" he asked with a soft smile. Anna laughed gently. "How could I forget? You told me not to touch you." David nodded. "And yet, you did. That one small act changed everything." Anna looked at him, her eyes warm. "Sometimes, all it takes is a little courage." David took her hand. "Thank you for having that courage. And thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself." Anna squeezed his hand. "We believed in each other." As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the city, David realized how much his life had changed. The walls he had built around his heart were gone. He was no longer alone or afraid. That night, David invited Anna to his home. They sat by the large window, looking out at the city lights. The world seemed full of endless possibilities. "Anna," David began, "I want to continue this journey with you. Not just as partners in the charity, but in life." Anna's eyes shone with happiness. "I want that too." They smiled at each other, a new chapter beginning in both their lives. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. David and Anna worked together to grow the charity, helping more families and building stronger communities. David used his influence and resources to create lasting change. And Anna's kindness and strength inspired everyone around her. One quiet evening, as they walked through the park near the charity office, David stopped and looked at Anna. "I never thought my life would be like this," he said softly. "I used to be afraid of change, of opening my heart." Anna smiled. "Change can be scary. But it can also bring the greatest happiness." David nodded. "You taught me that." They stood together in the peaceful night, surrounded by the sounds of the city, a city that was no longer cold and distant, but full of life and hope. David took Anna's hand again and whispered, "Thank you for changing my life." Anna smiled, her heart full. "And thank you for letting me." Together, they walked forward, ready to face whatever the future held. Because sometimes, all it takes is one brave moment to change a life forever.